So I looked up, because I had a DEXA scan recently for my bone density and lean body mass. And I looked up what the price is, and it was $150. So very, very affordable. Even if your insurance doesn't cover it, very, very well worth it. Do it early, like a lot of testing. Get good baseline in your 30s, so you know what your bone density is in, and you can start to do something about it then before it's too late. And you
go ahead.
Well, before off air, before the podcast started, we were talking about there's a difference you tell your patients between bone strength and bone density. So bone density is kind of a limited test. It tells us density, but doesn't necessarily tell us strength. Explain that.
Sure. So bones have elastin in them, and they have collagen. And the collagen and the elastin are part of the ground substance of bone. And that ground substance, which is, collagen, elastin, binds to minerals, and it binds to many different minerals, zinc and copper and manganese and phosphorus and calcium and magnesium, and strontium and even nickel to a certain extent. Like, we have a lot of different minerals in our bone, even though they're primarily calcium and phosphorus. But you can imagine the word elastin means elastic. So bones have elasticity, and not to mention, so when you measure density, you're simply measuring the equivalent of how much mass per volume, right? But strength has to encompass flexibility or elasticity as well. So I always give the analogy that you can have an oak tree and you can have a palm tree, and an oak tree, of course, is more dense, but it doesn't do well with a hurricane. Right. However, a palm tree twists and can bend and retain its form after the hurricane's passed, right? So I have clients who will say to me, I'm really athletic. I've been kind of small my whole life, and I've fallen a lot, and I just don't completely buy this bone density being as much of a risk as some of the physicians that they see might be saying. And so we do talk about that, tendons insert into bones, and it's that pull. It's not just the pounding, but it's the pulling of a tendon on a bone if you ever look at like all the different muscles in the body and how they attach to, for instance, just the femur. The entire femur is covered in muscle tendon insertions, and so that constant pulling from all the different activities that we do that create a healthy lifestyle and a healthy set of activities leads to the periosteum strengthening at that point. And then that translates through, so that creates the constant bend. When you think, Shawn and Janet, is your favorite activity mountain biking also?
I prefer biking over the mountain as part of it, but cross country would be better than, but yes, I do it, but I will tell you, I don't jump the gaps and down off of stuff. No, I'll go around. I'll let him do that.
Okay. All right. But biking is your primary.
Yeah.
Is biking both of your primary kind of like enthusiastic things you do, or are you?
Yeah, okay. I believe so.
Okay. So Shawn and I were just talking about like cyclists who are really light, and I don't know those statistics. He knows them and can explain them, but I always think of biking as being, it's pulling on a lot of different muscle groups, but it's certainly not creating a lot of the tension that you would need to support the lumbar vertebral strength, right?
Right. I agree.
So a lot of different activities. And so one of the things that I recommended to people who can't run anymore, because running was the original form of activity that we did for millions of years before we became good at all these things like skiing and cycling and gymnastics and whatever we do. And so I feel that there's enough validation that a mini trampoline that you run on is one of the best solutions, because it won't just create the torque, but it can create twist depending on which way you invert or evert your feet, and you can create a kind of elasticity through your whole entire musculoskeletal system, right? You would create elasticity in your discs. You would create elasticity in the cartilage end, right? The chondrocytes. Your bone would be compressed and then expand. And it's just a little gentler way to I think, embrace an activity that's different than your weight building, Shawn, but accessible to people. Like from the moment that you say it, they say, oh, I could do that, or I could do that with my kids, when they're in, I could buy one for my kids and for myself, and we could do it together. Just run on a trampoline,